Advances in technology can help us mitigate the effect of climate change, but sometimes the best thing we can do is to help nature help itself, as we'll see in this show. I'm Chris Lems in Lagos, Nigeria. Great to have you with us. Here's what's coming up. A blueprint from Germany for how to restore floodplains. Replanting mangroves in Cameroon to guard against rising sea levels. And how music is changing mindsets in Gambia. Well, we start in Uganda, which is embracing the future in the form of e-mobility. The country hopes it will be a real driver for change right across the board, as well as improving health outcomes and saving time and money. The aim is to drastically reduce emissions in the transport sector.
Emissions and noise from motor vehicles have been a growing burden in recent years for both residents and the environment in Kampala. According to the UN, the city has one of the worst levels of air pollution in Africa. A situation that the government wants to change with a campaign to phase out gasoline-powered vehicles in favor of electronic alternatives from e-bicycles to e-buses.
We see that Kampala is choking in air pollution, and bicycle is something that can address that.
It helps in that way whereby the environment is safe, the city is clean, people's health is also good. Uganda has developed a national e-mobility strategy, and we are targeting to transition the entire public transport by 2030.
The government's primary investment is its own car manufacturer, Kiira Motors, a joint venture with Makerere University. The electricity for charging the EV batteries is supplied from hydroelectric power. The state-owned company already has 27 e-buses in operation.
Private companies can also have potential customers and also area in the tourism sector. So we are working closely, especially with the Taxi Owners Federation in Kampala, which has predominantly been a consumer of 14-seater vans or matatus, to transition them to larger capacity full electric buses. And this is with the strong support of government, which is a priority that will transition from lower capacity to higher capacity.
Currently, however, the buses have primarily served the state institutions such as Uganda Airlines and Civil Aviation Authority rather than the public transport networks. A shame, says those who have been on board one.
This bus is very comfortable. You don't feel any vibration, you don't feel any smoke. The AC is fantastic, and you know the design itself. We are yearning that this bus, if it can reach northern Uganda, I think we're going to have the safest mode of transport experienced by the people of Uganda so far.
A lot of taxis and buses here are old and neither environmentally friendly nor especially safe. Michael Wanyama has founded an organization that tackles both road safety and health problems linked to traffic. His work involves regular checks on vehicles, roadworthiness, and their emissions, and sharing the data with the authorities.
When we have this data, government can look into it, setting the policies and regulations, and maybe create incentives that can help people acquire electric vehicles at affordable rates. Another thing, we as a technical research institution, we are also having a pilot on converting some of these vehicles to electric.
An option that could end up cheaper than buying a new vehicle. An electric commuter taxi costs just under 140 million Ugandan shillings or 35,000 euros and affordable for many small-scale cab operators. Jafari Abuyi works for the one that introduced the first e-taxi vans in Kampala and sings its praises.
If you're driving from here to, let's say from here to Jinja or Liganga, in the ordinary taxi that uses gasoline, you will need $50. It will have to drive you up to Jinja or Iganga and back, but for this you will need only $10. So it's so friendly via price, so it helps the community a lot, and people would save a lot on it.
One charge is good for 250 to 300 kilometers. Abui also pays regular visits to bus stations to demonstrate how the e-cab is charged. There is a lot of interest. Why I like it is electric. It doesn't consume fuel. Secondly, it's more profitable than the gasoline car. But with the state still imposing an import tax on EVs, for many drivers they are not an option. When the levy had been temporarily suspended, it was reintroduced to protect the country's own electric models. Unfortunately, these are even expensive, with the electric bus costing up to the equivalent of 270,000 euros. And the import tax is also affecting e-bicycle sales. Hakimi Owinyi is a passionate cyclist and conservationist and works at the EB, an e-bicycle supplier founded in Kenya that has a last-mile delivery services. He came across the company by chance through his cycling-related advocacy.
They sent me a bike to show cause, and different people came in, media houses, different leaders came in to amplify that cause. So my cause was like, how can we attain climate action? How does it look in practice from the individual standpoint, but also from the institutional standpoint?
It will take a lot more activists and investment for Uganda to make a significant switch to e-mobility. But a start has been made, even if it still be a long road ahead.
E-mobility is one way of reducing CO2 emissions, which are a major driver of global warming. One symptom of climate change is the increased risk of flooding. We go now to Europe, which has just recently seen deadly floods after the heaviest rainfall ever recorded. West Africa has also been deluged, with hundreds dying in worst-hit Niger. Flooding is one of the deadliest and most common natural disasters in the world, but nature already has a solution.
Rivers aren't supposed to look like this. Today, many of them are straight, narrow, depleted, and surrounded by concrete. Humans have a long history of changing rivers and their landscapes so they can use them for farming, industry, transportation, and to build houses close to their edge. But rivers and floodplains serve an important function. The cities of Leipzig, Markli, Berg and Schkeuditz in Germany are located on a major floodplain, home to one of the largest urban floodplain forests in Central Europe. Many floodplains along Germany's major rivers can no longer store excess water because of dikes that were built to stop water from reaching them, and some of the remaining floodplain areas are covered by fields and houses. In fact, most floodplains in Europe are thought to have deteriorated. But they're vital ecosystems. They absorb and store carbon, helping tackle climate change. Dikes can overflow or break, whereas intact floodplains can keep flash floods in check. And it's possible to revitalize floodplain landscapes. Ecologist Matthias Scholz has been studying the role of rivers and coastal wetlands for decades.
40 years ago, we realized this floodplain forest was undergoing a process of expansion. Many trees developed here that were not flood resistant and which displaced the tree species typical of a floodplain forest.
Elm trees or oaks can handle floods as well as dry periods better than maples, for instance. By absorbing moisture from the soil, they can lower the risk of flash floods. So researchers started purposely flooding a small area of the forest every spring for decades and watched what happened.
We found out that allowed the forest to stay moist for up to 3 months longer, even during drought periods, and that this floodplain forest was able to adapt to these wetter, more dynamic conditions. So species that don't belong here receded, leaving space and light for the tree, animal and plant species that are typical of the floodplain forest.
The forest was literally trained to handle more water again.
Even with flood-resistant trees, if they don't experience flooding for a long time, they may forget how to cope with it or how to adapt to it.
Data collected over 30 years shows how the ecosystem is returning to its natural state. The researchers were surprised how fast the forest recovered once water levels were adjusted. Rainer Werner is an engineer at the Leipzig Greenery and Water Bodies Department.
Bereits Ende der 90er Jahre hat die Stadt Leipzig begonnen, alte Rinnensysteme in der Aue, wie zum Beispiel hier den Burgauenbach, wieder zu verbinden und an die Hauptgewässer anzuschließen, sodass der Wald wieder Wasser bekommt.
The dike was cut in some places to let the water overflow into the floodplain.
Wir sehen deutliche Erfolge bei dem Anstieg der Grundwasserspiegel, die messbar nachgewiesen sind,
even within a very short
bei so einem
space of
kleinen
time,
Gewässer
and even with
bereits
such a small
deutliche
water
Erfolge
body,
nach kürzester
there are
Zeit hier im
visible,
Wald
measurable
sichtbar sind und
results.
messbar sind.
And in 2018, the city, NGOs and local authorities agreed to restore the floodplain over the next 30 years.
Wir haben hier, man sieht das sehr gut,
As you can see
wenn man
here,
sich
we've
anguckt,
moved the field relatively far away
das
from the edge of
relativ
the
weit
forest,
weggerückt vom
creating a
Waldkant,
large
sodass hier ein
corridor in
riesiger
which the
Korridor
water can
entsteht, wo
meander
das
freely.
Fließgewässer sich auch frei entfalten darf.
Christiane Froberg was in charge of revitalizing this old riverbed.
Wir haben eben dann immer
We
wieder
have
so
several outlets through
Austrittsstellen,
which, when the flood
wo,
comes,
wenn
the
dann das
rising water
Hochwasser
can flow.
kommt, das im Prinzip ansteigt
It flows
und dann
over
hier
this
über
very
das
low
ganz
bank
leichte Ufer
directly into
treten
the
kann und
forest.
direkt in den Wald fließt. Das heißt,
This
wir
means
können
that with the
mit
5.5
den neu
kilometers of new
gewonnenen
waterway, which
5,5
we've recently
Kilometern, die
finished
wir
building,
wirklich dieses Jahr
we
erst
can flood
beendet
around
haben,
45
bauen,
hectares of
ungefähr
floodplain
45
forest several
Hektar
times a year.
Arbeitsfläche fluten und das mehrmals im Jahr.
Fish and rare insect species have already settled in. The hard part is finding a balance between flooding the forest enough so it relearns how to store more water and not overflooding it, which would change the entire ecosystem. And different interests have to be considered too.
We're in a big city, so there are many different views on how the forest should be used. And recreational use is particularly important. That means that if we flood certain areas, then some paths become inaccessible in spring as a result. We need to explain this and provide information or offer alternatives. Though actually we found that there is a very high level of acceptance and that people often find very creative solutions.
Farmers in the area also needed to be convinced about the flooding plans.
Bringing more water into the landscape doesn't mean giving up agricultural use. You just have to adapt the agricultural practices, like turning once arable land into a wild meadow, and that of course has to be appropriately compensated.
In the next 10 to 15 years, 16 kilometers of former arms of the river could be revitalized. Dried up segments will be reconnected, and at least 30% of the original floodplain area will be underwater again, and instead of this, it will look like this. Of course, projects like this come with a hefty price tag. The city of Leipzig already spent 6.5 million euros to buy back land and build new bridges and gateways for crossing the newly restored river. But it's money well spent. In fact, flooding is the most expensive natural hazard in Europe. Flood damage caused by rivers could rise to 6.8 billion euros by the end of this century. Most large European cities are situated on floodplains. Some are predicted to suffer heavy flood damage in the future. And the changes that are being made to most of our waterways are adding to the risk of flooding, not reducing it. A recently adopted EU nature restoration law aims to restore almost all its damaged ecosystems.
When we consider the monetary damage that extreme events can cause to our society and the long-term effects required to address them, it's clear that putting money into ecosystem restoration is a future-proof investment.
And that's why more European cities situated in floodplains are experimenting with nature-based approaches.
Working with nature rather than against it is vital. In Cameroon, the coastal city of Douala is threatened by flooding that is linked to rising sea levels, but also to rapid urban growth and deforestation. Now, these are concerns for many cities, not just in Africa, but as we're about to see from Douala, it is in our hands to improve things.
Bringing new life to the deforested mangroves.
Each seedling is carefully planted by the Planète Urgence team. They want to turn things around in this forest on the outskirts of Douala. René Nungang works for the French NGO and is in charge of the project here on a small island in the Wari River, not far from Douala.
Il y a beaucoup à faire. Nous avons
There's a
constaté
lot
sur
to
le
do.
terrain que ce que nous
The way we
imaginions
found it
était
when
même
we
deux
arrived
fois
in the
au-delà
field
de
was
ça.
twice as
Ce
bad
que les
as we
satellites nous ont
imagined
montré,
from
on a vu qu'il y a
analyzing the
plus
satellite
d'espaces
images.
dégradés davantage. La difficulté,
Much more of
c'est
the
les
area was
barrières de
degraded.
ces envahissantes
The
que
other
nous
difficulty is the
rencontrons,
invasive plants that are growing everywhere here.
Et
So we're trying
nous
our
tentons
best
tant
to
bien
carry
que
out the
mal
reforestation
à appliquer les
techniques.
techniques de reboisement.
The organization started the reforestation project in 2020. The team is also employing local young people to help plant a total of more than 1,000 hectares. Many mangrove forests in Cameroon look like this. The UN estimates that 66% of them have been depleted. Things are especially bad in Douala, a city of around 4 million. It's gradually losing its protection at the mouth of the river, where Wari River flows into the sea. People in the metropolitan area have been cutting down forests in the surroundings for years.
They get it from areas, from the little islands inside the Douala area and out towards the sea. That helps to break this rise in sea level. And because of that, the cutting of this mangrove is exacerbating the situation of flooding, like I said, rise in sea level, which is affecting the increase in flooding.
Mangrove wood is used to build houses and as firewood, especially by the people on the outskirts of Douala and on the islands. Many women also use it to smoke fish that they sell. One fish vendor uses 2 trees worth of wood every month, and it is estimated that over 100 fish vendors work in the region. So a lot of wood gets destroyed. René Nungang is trying to convince the women to use more efficient methods of smoking the fish.
It's a business that brings in money, but we need to try and limit the problem. The proposal is to use less wood and to reduce the amount of mangrove wood that's used to around 75%. We've seen that these women use an enormous amount of wood to smoke the fish. But we've also learned that there is another method using a chimney, which reduces the amount of wood.
Along with the Planète Urgence, there are also local activists who want to raise people's awareness of the problem. Like Ayamba Achare Elvis. He grew up here and regularly visits the various communities living along the river.
Our mature mangroves, they are all being degraded, they are destroyed. So it's a big threat. And most of the streams where we used to bathe when we were kids, today they have disappeared.
The loss of the mangroves is affecting development in the entire region. This makes rapid reforestation all the more important. To make sure they have enough replacement plants available quickly, they've set up a tree nursery in the area with more than 2 million seedlings. They grow the 2 native species, Rhizophora and Avicennia.
Nous espérons que d'ici 30 ans, quand on revient ici,
we hope that in 30 years, all the areas of mangrove here which have been destroyed will be restored completely.
Que ça soit restauré complètement.
And hopefully the communities will see the benefits again and won't keep destroying the mangroves anymore, because we've made a huge effort in raising awareness.
They need a lot of patience to raise awareness and for planting. René Nungang and his team regularly checks whether the seedlings are thriving. Using marked sticks, they can see how well they are growing. After all, the success of the project also depends on this.
Trees are also the heroes of the next piece, along with one man who has been singing their praises. Deforestation has been happening at about twice the rate in Africa as elsewhere. A Gambian rap star has been using his massive popularity to inspire young people to help stop that trend.
Planting trees and singing while he does it. You'd expect nothing else from one of the Gambia's most popular rappers. And he's not doing it by himself. In total, 1 million trees are to be planted by 2027. That's the goal he set when he started the project. The chances are he'll be successful, given the support of his fans.
It's been amazing. People have been coming out in their numbers to support the fans, you know, to from the community leaders all the way to the kids. It's just been amazing. Everybody else is involved.
ST sells out stadiums. People identify with his music, which he performs in Mandinka, the main language spoken in the Gambia, and is known for being outspoken and calling out corrupt politicians.
When they all hate, I love my people. When the rain starts, I'm umbrella for my people. Dilikando kana kei roti for your people. Stay loyal to your people. My people are you people. Don't lie to the people. Speak the truth to your people.
If you have a huge following and these people listen to you and they follow you, you have these kids that want to be like you. You know, they look at what you do and what you say, and you know, when you use your platform to support, say, the environment and stuff like that, these people see that too, and then they feel there is a need.
ST has taken his 1 million trees campaign across the whole country to cities, rural communities, and remote areas. The Gambia's once dense forest cover has steadily diminished over the years due to deforestation, worsening the effects of climate change. Weather extremes such as heavy rains and drought is becoming increasingly frequent.
We have a lot of increase in temperature, daily temperature, because we have less trees now, because we have a lot of people getting involved in cutting down trees for wood production, for construction. Trees contribute to mitigating these greenhouse gases. Trees contribute to minimize the impacts of climate change in our environment.
The rapper has always seen his craft as a way of spreading his message. Today, he's recording his first track about environmental conservation. Don't cut the trees, he sings. Preserve the trees. Protect the environment. He's using his platform to encourage his fans to help him in his mission.
I have people that move all the way from this area all the way to anywhere to plant trees. I have people that call me, yo, on your next schedule, please do let us know.
Young and old are taking part in the initiative. ST is financing the trees himself through his foundation. His grassroots efforts to restore the environment's natural balance is inspiring communities across the Gambia to take action themselves. Like Sutu Sinjang in the west of the country.
We are thrilled to participate in these tree planting activities aimed at restoring forest cover. This is our environment, and that's why we are taking ownership, working collectively with the singer to achieve positive results.
Once the saplings are planted, they need to be watered regularly and taken care of to make sure they flourish. The people of Sutu Sinjang are committed to the project. The more the trees grow, the more carbon they store. Deforestation is a global problem. ST sees his project as a message, not just to Gambians, but to the world, about the importance of protecting the environment, combating climate change, and preventing biodiversity loss, and working together.
Political people, NGO people, people for the interest of the people. People, with people, stop using people, vehicle,
Our environment is seriously depleted. We have seen rising temperatures, rising sea level, inadequate rainfall, and you know, I think it's of vast importance that we take our environment seriously, because trees give life.
It's taken a year to plant the first 50,000 trees, and given the enthusiastic response to ST's initiative, The rapper will soon have achieved his goal of planting 1 million.
Wow, 1 million trees. That's an ambitious goal. That's all for today. Would love to hear what you think about the show. So feel free to reach us at eco@dw.com. You can also find more inspiring stories by searching for Eco Africa online. Thanks for tuning in, and goodbye from Vic Frisolems in Lagos, Nigeria. See you next time.
Lamu Allah yirol fi yirol